Okay, we are live. Hey guys, what's going on? I am Zura, and this is my test recording for YouTube channel, chess channel. And having said that, actually, first of all, I want to thank you, thank you for joining in and being part of this at any point now or in the future. Cool. Let's jump right into it. So, a few weeks ago, I played the Abu Dhabi Super Blitz tournament on chess.com. I got 8 points out of 11 games, and in the last round, I played Grandmaster Salem, aka Arabi Falcon, currently rated around 2680, and most importantly, a very respectable player, good fighter. Shout out to Salem. So we played out this Queen's Gambit. I was with black. Knight c3, bishop e7, knight f3, knight f6, bishop g5. Classical Queen's Gambit declined. I sometimes play Lasker, so in this position I decided to go for Lasker system if white goes bishop h4, which is knight after which black goes knight e4. Obviously, if short castle and simply b6, that's a good old Tartakova defense. But my opponent decided to take on f6, bishop takes f6, e3, and short castle. White plays queen c2, after which he makes his intentions very clear, actually. White wants to go push pawns on the king side. For example, h4, g4, g5 looks very attractive in view of the rook being still on h1. This is definitely not new, been played a lot of times. I played b6. Actually, I am recording this in May, and I played another Title Tuesday game, which I will cover in next few videos. My opponent played knight c6 against me. This time I played queen c2 system with white. I'll talk more about that in the next video. c5 would be interesting try as well, and if white takes dc5, queen goes to a5 is the one way to do this. dc would be more positional attempt. Bishop takes c4 and knight d7, trying to get that pawn back. c6 is probably the most realistic try. B takes c6, short castle, let's say bishop b7, rook f1, queen c7, and black does have an isolated pawn on c6, but I think bishop pair, if not fully, at least somewhat compensate the weakness of that pawn. Ouch, too many buttons. So if queen a5, cd5, ed5, long castle is very interesting continuation, which seems to be the main line. Black is not on time to develop the king side, so bishop c3 looks like the best try. Queen takes c3. Queen takes c3 is again traditional way of I wouldn't say equalizing completely, but the way to go. B takes c3, and before actually we move to that, queen a2 I think is very interesting as well. Let's say it's something like bishop d3, and black goes knight c6. White now goes king d2, threatening rook a1, I assume. All right. Queen takes c3, b takes c3, bishop e6, knight d4, rook c8, trying to get that pawn back. But white has actually a very nice way of stealing an advantage here. Stealing an initiative actually would be better said. It takes c5, bishop takes d5, knight goes to b3, attacking the rook. Rook has to move away, but that loses the bishop, so bishop has to take on b3, rook d8 check. Actually, white has a very nice intermezzos, series of intermezzos here. King h7, bishop d3 check, and only after that white captures bishop back. White basically activated bishop and the rook, especially the rook, which is putting a knight and the rook to sleep at the moment. If rook c3, king b2, and white is, I think, definitely winning this. Okay, back to the game. I played b6. My opponent goes h4 immediately. Again, a long castle would be another way to try this, but I'm not trying to get too much into the opening debate here. So going back to the game, c5 was played, which was answered with rook d1 from my opponent. Kind of logical way to continue bringing rook into the active square. C takes d4, e takes d4, and I actually committed a small blunder here. D takes c4 is a mistake because it allows queen to e4, trapping my rook, or else I have to give a piece, minor piece for it, which is obviously hopeless. This was a few seconds of embarrassment, to be honest, during the game. But then I realized that I can maybe try to get that, trap that queen in the corner. So I went queen c7. Before getting into complications that arise after queen takes a8, I want to say that actually knight c6 probably actually gives black a very good play, because now g4 is met with e5, and if white goes g5, rook e8 is very strong, centralizing the rook. And if white captures bishop on f6, e takes d4, discovered check, knight e2, queen takes f6, knight is now under attack, d4 pawn cannot be touched because of capture there twice, and if bishop g2, bishop g4, and now knight is again in trouble. If you try to defend it, I assume something like knight b4, or probably d takes c4 is also enough to finish it off. If instead of g5, white tries to take on e5, which would probably be more tenacious, black can take bishop g4, and if rook d5, queen moves to e7, and with the precise play, white is again in trouble. As you can see, there is no sign of attack right now on the king side, while white king seems to be in trouble in the center. Okay, back to it. D takes c4, queen e4, queen goes to c7. Objectively, actually, queen d7 is a stronger move, and I will get into that in a little bit. But first, I want to bring attention that the reason Queen A8 doesn't work right now is Knight C6, and Bishop B7 traps the queen. If white tries to free that queen with knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen c7, and knight to b5, attacking the queen, not allowing, not giving the time to black to play bishop b7 or a6. But right now black actually can take on e5 and then take on b5 also, and right now it's knight and 2 pawns for the exchange, and black is most likely getting another one because bishop a6 is still a threat, and if you go bishop f3, queen e5 check, knight b4, b2 pawn is hanging, bishop a2, c3. This looks like the end. Interesting try though, very interesting try after queen d7 would be knight g5, which is kind of sacrificed but not really, because that pawn cannot be touched obviously, because after h takes g6 h file seems to be a decisive. So bishop g5 obviously is, no, actually not so obvious, but bishop g5, h takes g5, and if bishop b7, queen will just move back to e3, still forcing to somewhat open the h file. So best response on knight g5 would actually be rook d8. If queen h7 check, king f8 right now, and black survives this because queen h8, just king moves to e7. d5 would be another try, but it doesn't work because we can just take on c3 and then take on d5, and now both kings are in danger, but I think white feels more uncomfortable than black does, because at least black has 2 pawns and can try to maybe run away king e6, king e7, king d6, king c7. Knight is also hanging. A lot of checks, ouch, excuse me, a lot of checks on e file should definitely be good for black. Bishop c4 would be very interesting try, keeping the pressure. The computer suggests queen c7, bishop e2, and basically the following variation. Queen d7 actually very nice, d5, bishop takes d5, knight e4 takes the pawn, knight c3, a6. This is one of those 0-0 lines that for human eye would be almost impossible to go through, but eventually it ends up in somewhat interesting material imbalance. Rook a7, bringing rook into the defense from the 7th rank, and if you take on f5, then knight goes to f6, picking up 2 pieces for the rook. White has the pawn and probably will be capturing another one on the queen side, but with the precise play, black keeps unclear evaluation. Basically, I try to follow it until the end, and it actually results in an amusing repetition. Queen takes f2, rook takes b6, rook f3 check, king moves to g7. White has no checks. F2 queen is the taboo, of course, because of knight fork. Knight takes f2, queen takes e4, getting the read of the defender, but rook b1, queen takes f3, with the draw. Actually, it's not a perpetual. I think king goes to h2, but just simply, oh, it is actually queen e6 and then going back to e2. Anyways, another interesting try, and I think very strong one, would be taking on c4, bishop b7, queen h7, and king f8, and now going short castle. You might have noticed that yes, it transposes. You can go queen h. You can start with queen h7 and then take bishop c4, and after in this current position, basically, white could go short castle, which seems very strong indeed. Does that mean oh, we can't go queen c7? That would be illogical if we go queen c7 right here, or maybe queen c6. That would probably be a better try for black. But I have bishop b7 down, which is, I think, more practical and possible to happen. But short castle is now very strong move, intending d5 next, which comes with devastating force. Center opens up. King side is weak because of obviously king h8 threat. So black, I think, is doomed. Okay, back to the game. I played queen c7. My opponent takes on a8. I go knight c6, and almost instantly my opponent answers with knight b5, which is actually a mistake. Knight e5 would be a better try, and point is, if I capture bishop e5, then knight goes to b5, attacking my queen, and queen does not have a comfortable square to move. Basically, if queen e7, then queen takes c6, and if queen d7, d takes e5, rook discovery, and queen is again under attack. And if I move to e7, queen takes c6 and picks up yet another piece. So knight d4 was another source of counterplay, kinda, because if you move queen back, at least now I want to get on e5, and again exchange for £1 might not be as bad of a deal as being a rook down. So that would be nice if he goes queen e4, but rook d4, he can just take rook d4, and now on bishop b7, why will just give up that queen, and he already managed to pick up 2 rooks and a piece for the queen, which is more than enough material. Queen e5, check, rook goes to e4, bishop takes e4, knight takes e4. If f5 is answered with f4, and queen has to move from e5, and then knight will move away. Rook and 3 piece, I think, is pretty much clear, the outcome of the game. So yes, knight e5 would be a winning move, but he goes knight b5. I go queen d7 instantly, and basically somewhere around here I realized that it's not so easy for white anymore, because after knight e5 I can take knight takes e5, d takes e5, and now I take on b5. When white takes on f6, I have a check from this diagonal, a5 e1 diagonal, which puts white in an uncomfortable situation. If he goes rook d2, I go rook d8, and seems like there is no defense to the rook. However, bishop d3 is a very strong move. I think it's called Blachuta on the language of endgame compositions. Yeah, is that right? Endgame studies. Um, anyways, bishop d3. Basically, the concept is when you put the piece on a square where opponent's multiple piece can capture it, but it ruins the other thing, basically. So let's say if rook d3, then c8, bishop is hanging, and after, let's say, king h7, white escapes, short castle, evacuate the king. If rook d2, pawn takes g7, king takes g7, and after queen c7, things are definitely not so clear, because black has to be aware of multiple checks on the king side. However, obviously, it's clear who is in the driver's seat. He goes king e2 in the game, and I go c3, threatening bishop a6 check, discovering my rook to get the queen. White goes king f3. c3 is c3 pawn itself actually is becoming a danger here, because if you go for example, move queen back, then I can probably take on b2, and if you move king c2, and then winning the rook and most likely the game. If bc, I have bishop a6 check, and king cannot move on a square where black queen won't be able to check it. For example, king d2 check, king e3 check, and then capturing the queen on a8. So that is total disaster. King f3 is the only move, and here I played e5 in few seconds. The threat now is double, actually. So bishop g4 check, and then queen f4 is the checkmate if king moves to g3. My opponent plays queen e4. By the way, c2 immediately, starting with c2 would be a better way to do this, because if rook c1, then I go e5, and now it's actually over. However, best answer would probably be bishop d3. Let's say c takes d1, rook takes d1, queen takes h4, and black is still a pawn up, and white king is still not very comfortable. So I would still feel very comfortable playing this, obviously, but went e5 in the game, which allows queen e4. Move that I didn't see was after c2. Actually, let's take a moment to appreciate this position. Queen is hanging, and if you take the black queen, then pawn takes rook, promoting to the queen with the check, and bishop is still pinned. So I think black has a huge winning chances here. However, bishop c4 was very strong, with the threat of bishop takes f7. I managed to get that rook, but not more, because queen g6 is also a very unpleasant threat. So I think I'm pretty much forced to go bishop b7, and we trade bishops, after which actually a very interesting rook endgame arises. After queen e4, queen takes e4, king takes e4, rook c8. A strong move. I think this move deserves an exclamation mark, because if you go king e5, rook c2, and rook captures a lot of pawns on the second rank, and if rook d2, then king f6. If you do rook d6 check, I go back king g7, and white still can capture the pawn on e5. Uh, Back to the game. My opponent did not see bishop c5, c4. Just to give you an idea, we probably have below 20 seconds around here, maybe 20 to 30 for me, um, or I am not sure exactly, but somewhere around that. So he instantly played rook c1, which ends up losing after bishop b7. Queen has to capture my bishop on b7, and then I do this check on f4 and take on c1. Bishop is still pinned. King is very vulnerable. Rook is still not involved in the game, and after rook d8, my opponent resigned. Obviously, queen d1 and promoting to another queen with a checkmate would be faster, but for some reason I intuitively played rook d8. Anyways, this was the game that I wanted to show, and I hope you enjoy um, the game as much as I did, because I had a lot of fun. And actually, we played another game next week on Title Tuesday. And I was with White that time. There was also wild fight. I will be covering that in the next video. Cool. Till next time.